I'm really sorry because I heard Jim from Penn State saying it's a technical track, but he was marketing, and then I just heard the people saying, oh, it's the least technical talk you will have today, and I think my talk is not technical either. So it's another one. I would say more strategy, but I will try to touch on some architecture and some other stuff. Quickly about me, like Jim, got a child very late in my life, late 40s. Really enjoy it. Sorry. Only one. I've been in digital for a long time now, and actually don't want to tell you too much about me, except that I work for Pantheon. I work in the product team. I'm a director of product management, and I work specifically on innovative products for Pantheon. So I don't know how many of you know Pantheon, by the way. I'm still, wow, fantastic. I used to work for companies which are way less known. So a lot of people know Pantheon for hosting WordPress and Drupal, and that's actually much more than that. And what I'm working on is especially much more than that. It's more the long-term vision for Pantheon, but it's also something we're releasing beta right now. About me as well, I just want to say, because it's very important in this talk, I worked a lot with content management and with building websites. Started with NetDynamics, WebLogic, CodeFusion, Spectra. There was a poll about code, about Spectra. Who worked with Spectra? Anybody knows Spectra? That was Alea. After CodeFusion, they created Spectra, a big fail. Then they got acquired by Macromedia. Homebrewed PHP framework, that's when I met open source 20 years ago, 23 years ago. I worked a lot in Python, Clone, and Zope, but I worked also a lot with PHP, Easy Publish, Easy Platform, and then Drupal and WordPress late to the game there, but I know that, and others. Why do I say all this? Because actually, being a veteran, I almost left at some point. I'm tired about that. I really felt like this, and I think a lot of companies feel like this, a lot of content workers feel like this. In 30 years of CMS, we have not yet really solved the problem. Building websites, bringing content, design, and code at the same time on a website is extremely complex. It's still complex, and really, when I look at CodeFusion, the early Easy Publish, Vignette, or what we do now, well, actually, I don't think it's really simpler. I think we face the same problems. The architectures are coming in ebb and flows, like going back to we decouple, we recouple, we decouple, we recouple. We are actually in a phase now where there's a trend to recouple things. We were in meetings yesterday with people who are actually rolling back from decoupled WordPress to monolith WordPress, and they were happy with that. So it's very interesting. This is just telling me that there's something we didn't solve well, and this can be perceived looking at users. And I think for technology, we should always have a user-first approach to solve problems. The thing is, when we talk to our customers, and we did this at Pantheon talking to our users, where do your authors are creating content? Very few are creating content in the CMS. Actually, WordPress might be a little bit of an exception, where, especially in education, there's a lot of people who really like the interface. But otherwise, the vast majority of the web is made by people who create content into a text processor, Google Doc, Office, Microsoft, maybe a bit of a Notion now, other things. And the content is moved to the web by other people doing manual copy-paste, which is a real problem in my opinion. The only people that actually really like the CMS is the ones which are working full-time in the CMS. But actually, by definition, they are not really anymore journalists, or they are not anymore, marketers, or they are just CMS operators. So it doesn't work well. They work, again, I mentioned, in Google Docs a lot. And they just generate extra work for others to do things, which gets us to face some problems, cost, time and money, governance, because when you do things manually, you need to enforce some processes. You create your content in Google Doc, you load it in Drupal. The next time you want to edit it, you can edit it in Drupal. And the third time, you have someone who wants to edit it in Google Doc, and you have your merge problem. How do you do that? Governance. You need control. It's not easy. And also, there's nothing as bad as having users which are not happy with the tool you provide to them. And actually, people like Google Docs. So that's one of the things. Long story short, we think that building website, publishing content is still a big pain point, and we do invest time and money into researching new options for that. Because just what we have today is not cutting it. Even if we love Drupal, we love WordPress, it's not cutting it, sorry. Actually, Dries was saying this, I was with him 2 months ago, that's exactly what he was saying. He was talking about innovation, and he was referring to Jeff Bezos, who was saying, the best thing when you want to innovate is to take problems that people will always have. Like, try to solve a problem that will always be there, and he was taking the example of making it easier to publish on the web. That's something that will always be there. So, what we're doing is taking a different approach to that. By the way, I should have time track, so tell me if I'm off on the timing at some point. The approach we want to take is to try to let, as much as possible, people work in their tool of choice. And what we do at Pantheon is WebOps. WebOps is basically facilitating the work of the web team to work together to publish things. So it's not just DevOps. It's not just about the people in the development team to roll out features more easily. It's also about people creating content and people creating design. So what we started to look at is how can we get the people in content ops and design ops work with their tool, just like we did it with the developers, which today work in their tool of choice, actually Drupal, WordPress, GitHub, and others. And so we looked at what are the tools of choice for editorial and what are the tools of choice for design, and how can we automate that. And the numbers and the results around Google Docs are just incredible. Like the satisfaction, and this is maybe a little bit biased, but there are sources and there are real studies still. People out of school, if you're given the choice to choose a tool to create content, 86% Google Docs. Other facts that I don't want to go, but basically in 10 years, Google just not only catched up on market share, but like reached an NPS with Google Docs that nobody had, even Microsoft Word never reached that. So we said we will start with that because it seems there's quite a few people who like to work in Google Docs to create content, and we will look at how we can keep them in Google Docs as long as possible. We are also looking at, even if we are not that advanced, the same thing for Figma, because there are things as impressive when you look at Figma's success. Like this is a survey about the tools used by UX designers, and you can see that just we are reaching almost 100%. It's almost a monopoly at this point, honestly. It's incredible. So we are looking into this as well, and what we are trying to do is to let the web team meet and work where they think it's best to work. So we try to build automation and integration for all those tools so that all those persona involved in the web operation can work together, remaining in their tool of choice. That's a little bit what I'm sharing about, and that's what my talk is about. And now we will go a little bit more in architecture, and hopefully I will have time for a little demo. But what we started to build is basically simplified here in the 3-tier. I don't like to use this, is very architectural term, but that's really a 3-steps pipeline where we split the process of publishing content or publishing design or even code in 3 steps. There's the creation phase, there's the production phase, and there's the delivery, which is the end website. That's where Pantheon has been always perceived, just hosting WordPress and Drupal, but actually today it's already much more than that, with things like multi-dev and facilitating how developers can spin up environment for testing and these type of things. We want to go beyond, and when it comes to content especially, it makes a lot of sense. So as I mentioned, we decided to start with Google Drive, Google Docs. The API is called Google Drive. We want the people who is creating the initial copy or even the revision of the copy itself to work in Google Docs, and we developed actually an add-on to Google Docs for that enabled them to publish on their website, whichever the website technology is. So of course, Drupal, WordPress, and Next.js for us, because those are website technologies that we support at Pantheon. But technically, it should also work with whichever website you want to use, as long as it's working with standards. when we say this to people who have been in content management for a long time, they always tell us that's a dream. That's you're dreaming. You're naive. It's much more complicated than writing a copy in a Google Doc or in a Word document. Absolutely right. It's not a simple problem to solve, but there's much more. And that's why there's a second step here, which is actually in the print media we would call this pre-press. That's where you add a lot of things around the initial content, the real creative content, let's say the copy. So that's typically where you will add a level of structured content into metadata, which allows a lot of things to be actually measured and performed and do what you want on the website. So title, description, summary is something very classic. SEO optimization, proofing your content, choosing images, maybe generating images, making sure the content is compliant when you are in a regulated environment. Of course, always making sure content is accessible. Those things are really important, and they are not necessarily the task of the creator of the content. So this production phase, we see it's not like just an API from Google Docs to the web. It's basically a pipeline. There are a lot of solutions now that are actually more doing like just API gateways. That is much more than that, and there is actually an application here that will be with user interface and with providing the ability to do things. But there's also here the desire to automate and to remove some of those tasks which are sometimes not really bringing value, which are really easy to automate, especially with the advance of Gen AI. So that's basically what we are, for the Gen AI part, that's what we are doing, and I will just go into a slightly more complex and more technical diagram about the solution we are building. Technically, it looks like this. On the authoring layer, we build add-ons so that the system can actually push content into the pipeline, and I will show you the one for Google Docs. This content is pushed using to the production layer, which is nothing else than a SaaS integration layer. I call it a SaaS content integration layer. And so it's talking with it in a pure SaaS way with a REST API. It's converting the content into a content store. The format here is Markdown for the core content, and then any type of structured content on top of this. The talk just before, which was about how to structure the content, I'm 100% behind this. It's so key, it's so important, but it's not always necessarily the author who will do this, so we will see that. The other component of our service, all the service run on a Google Cloud platform, GCP, so we leverage a lot the capabilities for search, indexing, and also LLM Gen AI, basically. So what we are doing and working now with Vertex is to automatically look into the content and ask Vertex to suggest description, title, tagging, categories, images. We are just starting here, so I won't show you too much about that because that's just the beginning, but I'm sharing the vision, the architectural vision. And when we think about images, there's of course generating images, which might work in some context where it's, let's say, low quality content, or just, I don't know, something you go fast, maybe marketing. But it could also be choosing images, which is a real task in publishing, or in just, if you have a dam which is full of plenty of images, from the content that an author just created, you can come with a selection of images and let the human do the last step. So personally, I don't see Gen AI as replacing anyone here, but just as facilitating the work that needs to be done at this stage of the workflow. Just like here, by the way, because people now, writers, are probably using AI when they are writing, bouncing ideas, asking for suggestions for copy or things like that. So once we have all this with an actionable user interface to manage this collection of content, we call them collections. These collections of content are available through a GraphQL API. Not only just the blob content, but also all the structure which is around it, including a search, including a full text search, which is based on Vertex. And we make this content available to different website technology, and I mentioned them. We started with Next, and then we moved to developing a plugin for WordPress and developing a module for Drupal. So that's what we do. How am I with time? I have no idea. 15 minutes, so that's good because I can show you a little bit how it looks like. And then I'll get back to the slide. So, and I think it's interesting to look at it when I believe like really that Google, in terms of collaborative content, it's really interesting to bench that with other ways to try to get people to collaborate in real time on the document. Here I'm alone here, I should have asked Jim or Josh to play with me at the same time on the document, but this could be, like, we could have many people in this document. What you have to do to use it first you have to be a Google Workspace user. So you have a Google account, you will go on the marketplace and you will develop an add-on, and you will download an add-on for your Google Docs system, and the add-on will be here. This add-on will bring to the author the ability to publish, but also the ability to do much more than that. Will bring the ability to add structure, add meta information, leverage AI when it will be implemented there, because it's not yet there, but I explained to you the concept. And then at the end, maybe publish. But when you decouple and when you go headless, the first resistance you will have from users is that even if we think, yes, they are decoupled, at the end of the day, content exists in the presentation layer, and the creator of the content wants to see the content in its final shape. So preview is super important. So that's the first thing we did. Here I'm working on a piece of content which is, I was working on this one during the Olympics, so I was just dropping things that I was taking on websites, and Google Docs is great for that. It's also great, what did I do here? Yep. Is that this one? No, I just reopened my closed thing. I know what happened. How do we reopen the Logitech thing? Install new driver for Mac, and now when I touch, it's clicking. How do I reopen? Restore. Here we go. All right. So things interesting in Google Docs that you can do, for instance, for a reporter or for anyone writing content. This is a table, but it's more than a table. It's actually a linked table, so it's linked to a real Google Sheet. So you can have a real Google Sheet that is actually very structured to manage data, and you get your table in Google Docs. This is unrelated to content technology. This is just built in Google, and that's one of the many reasons why it's actually interesting to keep people in Google Docs, because they can leverage things like that. This table itself is leveraged by actually an HTTP request, which is up, just parsing an HTTP request and loading a table. So a reporter can do that, and when I was doing this during the Olympic, every morning I was basically refreshing, getting the update on the medals, and just pushing this. So this seems very dynamic. For us it's not, but I pasted this and I will show you how it links. So I was mentioning the first thing you want to do is see how this content, this long form article would look on the website that I'm working on. And it will look like this, basically. I click on preview. I access a real-time preview of my content on the web, even if the content has not been published. We actually have a round trip with a WebSocket that is actually pulling this, and now I can actually continue to work the best Canadian Olympics. I can decide to drop images. I don't know if I have images on my laptop. I can basically, well, I will put myself, sorry. That's the first one I find. And this comes here. So you have actually a tool where you can still work in Google Docs, but get the exact look how it will be on the web, although it's not yet published. It's just a round-trip preview. And at some point, well, I will close my thing here. At some point, you might want to publish it, and then, like this is also something that was actually quite interesting. You can just go grab it directly from Google Sheet and just paste it, and it automatically goes as an image in your doc. So that's one thing. I will remove this because it's disturbing for me. The other thing is the metadata. Here, that's not enough, the Google Doc. We all know that. So I spoke about metadata that could be maybe populated by LLM or not. Regardless, you choose what you want to do. But the fact is, we had a layer of metadata that structured the content here, and you can create your own schema. So every customer of us can create its own schema to embed the content into a layer of metadata that can structure basically the content repository. And you can have all type of fields, and you can have, of course, title, description, and images, which are the standard, but then we will have all the open graph fields there as well, which is very important for when you share on the social platforms. So you have a layer of managing metadata. You can manage these things. You also have a layer to add content which actually doesn't live in the document itself, but you want to refer to it. Let's say I'm doing a product review and I want to bring a product card where there will be my product, a price, and directly actionable going to the eShop to buy something. Or let's say I want to simply capture data. I can just update what we call a web component. And here what I'm doing, sorry, I'm typing not in front of my keyboard, well, that's okay. I'm inserting what we call a component. The component is not living in the document, it's basically a URL, but we are inserting it in the doc. That's something that Google did that is called a smart chip now, so we will basically translate this into a smart chip. And this is actually matching components on the website. So if you do a Next website, it's a React component. If you do a Drupal website, it's an SDC component. If you do a WordPress website, actually it's not anything yet because there's nothing like this in WordPress, but we're still searching for what we do with that in WordPress context. But that is powerful because you can, again, bring more structure into your document in a simple way, and you can always go there and preview it and possibly have an interface where you do something a little bit smarter than just this. So that's what you can do, and you can also review content before publishing it. So I'm reviewing it quickly here. And it will give you things such as accessibility problems. You noticed that my preview was black. We don't carry any of the styles and design of Google Docs. We carry content, but we actually put a lot of effort to sanitize Google Doc markup so that it's actually clean HTML markup. So part of that is also providing all the reporting around that sanification. You got it in French, I'm not the best. Some words are really... Anyway, I have all the problems here, like hard-coded size, font, or this type of things, or colors. Everything will be skipped. And finally, we kept the user a long time in this document, possibly with collaborators, with sharing here, using suggestions, using commenting, using all the power of the tool. At some point, the user can publish, and when you do this, and only when you do this, the content goes into the middle layer that I called the integration layer. And you can decide to have automatic publishing or not, because you might want to gate this behind an editor-in-chief who wants to review things, so it's a little bit up to you. Now I published automatically in this case, but it could be totally gated into a workflow, basically. And that's what we do. This is the case with the Next.js website. We developed the same thing in Drupal. So this is a case of a content which is actually here. Yeah, that's this one, I think. Yeah, that's our sample content. The way we do it in Drupal is interesting, so I just want to say a word about that. We integrate it at the view system layer. So it's actually not creating content within the Drupal database. It's just hooking the view system to the GraphQL API, just like you would hook it to a Solar engine or to something else. So if you go in the, and again, I'm not the expert in Drupal, but if you go in the view system, you will have some content which lives in Drupal here, of course, and you will have some content types and some views which are specific here, which are called umami stories somewhere. Here. These two guys here are coming actually from the GraphQL endpoint, and all the meta information that I showed on the add-on on the sidebar is also available, and you can use it to build your website. So in this case, we built a listing of stories, a search filter, and a full view of the story, basically. So that's the way we do it. And to close on quickly, With WordPress, we have a totally different approach, because with WordPress, we basically bring the content into WordPress, fitting the WordPress data structure, because it's essential, because otherwise all the plugins will not work. So different approach, Drupal WordPress, different approach for us to publish to the solution. So I'll get back to my slide to, I guess, I'm maybe a little over time, maybe? Get back to my slide to finish very quickly with a couple of things beside that. This is a lot of value here, benefits. It's really modernizing your architecture, but also removing some lock-ins. This will be actually really interesting even to do. We consider to use this to do migrations, including from one version to another of the same system or from one system to another. It's also very useful to leverage GenAI in a way which is clean, because it's layered, it's pipeline, and it's a very future-proof approach to architecture. I want to say that the Google Doc thing is just one part of the puzzle, and it's not for everything, so it needs to be clear. It's for long-form content. Knowledge-based doc, blog, news, stories, great. For the rest, there's still the regular way of doing things. I think I'm a little bit over time, but I'm taking questions if there are questions.
I just had a question about Google Docs are pretty powerful. You can do a lot with. Is there any level of validation before it gets to be published on the site? And then for content that is published on the site, how does that tap in? You said it's not in the database, so how might I still use my search, my Solar API, my things like that? How does that?
So all the content goes from Google Doc to a middle layer, which is so it's sanitized. So we clean it up and we remove things which are not accessible and things like that. So clearly it's a two-step thing. And for Drupal, the question about the content not being in the database, Drupal, we use the view system, which means you can build basically Drupal interaction in the same way as you build it with a Solar backend or even with the database.
So the indexing is still the same?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So in the middle portions, are editors still editing stuff even after it's transferred from docs over to where all the metadata gets added and the images gets added? So is it like a two-step?
That's a good question. Actually, the answer is yes. And the better is I show you. I just happen to have my Figma open here. In the middle where
transfer the next speaker probably.
Yeah. Okay. You can do the transfer. The long story short is you have a UI which looks like this, which can send you back to Google Doc, because the key is to keep the link between Google Doc and your thing. But here, it's typically the webmaster or the admin or the chief editor. He will do metadata work, and it will be simpler here. If he wants to go back to the content itself, he jumps to Google Doc from the link which is here, if that works. Yeah.